HTML form elements. This chapter describes all the different HTML form elements. The HTML form elements. The HTML form element can contain one or more of the following form elements. We have the input, the label, select, text area, button, field set, legend, data list, output, option, and app group. The input element. One of the most used form element is the input element. The input element can be displayed in several ways depending on the type attribute. And here we can see an example. We have the label element, we have the for attribute, we have the input element, we have the type attribute, we have the ID attribute, and the name attribute. So we can go to Visual Studio Code and we can create a template. So we're going to create a file, new file, you click it. I'm going to name it index.html. I'm just going to type a shift exclamation mark so I can have a template. I'm going to save it, and we can just grab this piece of code and just paste it inside of the body like this. And here we have in lines 11 and 12 we have the label element. You can read if you want the information. You have the input element too. Let's Control plus so we can make it a little bigger. So we're gonna press Control L plus O, or you can just go to your file and just right click and open with Live Server. But as you can see, we have this first name. That is because we have the label element, we have the for attribute equal sign double quotes, and we're gonna have inside of the double quotes F name, that stands for first name. So we close the angle brackets, the text is gonna be first name colon, and then we're gonna end the label tag, and we do that with angle brackets slash label. In line 12 we're gonna have the input element with the type equal sign double quotes text. We're gonna have the id attribute, the ID attribute equal sign double quote F name. It has to match the for attribute of the label element. And finally we're gonna have the name attribute equal sign double quote F name. So this is the result that we have. This is our website here, and if you go to the try it yourself, we're gonna have the same example. So first name, and they have the submit button. But since we are not dealing with a server, if we submit it, it's not gonna go anywhere. We click submit and it's just gonna say this tutorial does not teach you the server processing input. So that is that. All the different values of the type attribute are covered in the next chapter, so you can click this link and you can check this article if you wanna read more about it. Now we have the label element, and as you saw in the Visual Studio Code, here we have the label element. You can read this. We have the label element represents a caption in a user interface. The caption can be associated with a specific form control known as the label element's labeled control, either using the for attribute or by putting the form control inside the label element itself. So that is that. Here also we have some definitions, some context. The label element defines a label for several form elements. The label element is useful for screen reader users because the screen reader will read out loud the label when the user focuses on the input element. The label element also helps users who have difficulty clicking on very small regions such as radio buttons or checkboxes, because when the user clicks in the text within the label element, it toggles the radio button slash checkbox, the for attribute of the label tag. So they're referring to this one. This is the for attribute, and you can read all this information if you want. The for attribute of the label tag should be equal to the ID attribute of the input element to bind them together. So and we already saw some context very similar in the previous video. Now we have the select element. The select element defines a drop-down list. So here we have the label element, we have the for attribute. In this case, the for attribute is going to be cars, and you have to do that equal sign, double quotes, and then inside of the double quotes cars. We close the angle brackets, and this time it's going to say choose a car, colon, and then we're going to end the label tag. So let's check it out. Let's click here and let's see what happens. So this is what we have here. So this is the code, and this is the final product. So it's gonna say the select element defines a drop down list. Choose a car. You have these options, 4 options: Volvo, Saab, Fiat, Audi, and then you have the button submit. So again, we're not working with a server here. If you submit it, it's not gonna go anywhere. So let's just check this example. Let's go to Visual Studio Code. I just grabbed this example, I'm gonna paste it here. And again, there's nothing special. We have an H2, the select element. Then in line 7 we have the paragraph. The select element defines a drop down list, column. Now in line 9 we're gonna have the form element. We're gonna have an action, equal sign, double quotes slash action underscore page.php. So I don't have this file here. You can create this file, action underscore page.php, but you can create it and just leave it empty, but let's just do it like this. Inside of the form element we're gonna have the label element. We're gonna have the for attribute, equal sign, double quotes. This time is gonna be cars. We close the angle brackets, and the text, well, the context that we're gonna have is gonna be choose a car, colon, and then we're gonna end the label tag. So we do that in line 10. Now in line 11 we're gonna have the select element. The select element represents a control for selecting amongst a set of options. So we have the select element. We're gonna have the ID, equal sign, double quotes is gonna be cars. It has to match the for attribute of the label element. The name attribute is gonna be equal sign, double quotes, and it's gonna be cars. Okay, so in lines 12 to 13, no, in lines 12 to 15 we're gonna have the option element. So we're gonna have 4 option elements. So in line 12 we have the option element. We have the value attribute. The content of this attribute represents the value to be submitted with the form. Should this option be selected, if this attribute is omitted, the value is taken from the text content of the option element. So it's going to be equal sign, double quotes, and in this case you can type whatever name you want. This time we're using Volvo. We close the angle brackets. Now the context is going to say Volvo, and then we're gonna end the option tag, and we do that with angle brackets slash option. So we're gonna go to line 13. Again, we're gonna have an option element. We're gonna have the value attribute, equal sign, double quotes is gonna be Saab. The context is gonna be Saab. We're gonna end the option tag. In lines 14 we're gonna have an option element. The value attribute is gonna be Fiat. The context is gonna be Fiat. And in lines 15 we're gonna have an option element. The value is gonna be assigned to Audi. In line 16 we're gonna end the select tag, so we're gonna do angle brackets slash select. So that is that. And finally in line 17 we're gonna have the input element. So we're gonna have the input element. The input element represents a type data field, usually with a form control to allow the user to edit the data. And the type attribute is going to be submit. So type equal sign, double quotes, inside of the double quotes is going to be submit. And in lines 18 we just end the form tag. So we save it, we press Alt+L+O to open our website, and this is our website. This is how it looks like. You have select the element, choose a car, as we put here, choose a car. We can change this context if you want to choose a vehicle. I don't know, a vehicle. Let me see. So it's changing. Choose a vehicle. Yeah, choose we can change here, and you can also change, I don't know, the name of this Tesla. Let's say the value is gonna be Tesla, so let's put here Tesla. Okay, let's save it. Okay, see, we have Tesla now. Choose a car: Tesla, Saab, Fiat, Audi. And then if we click submit, it's gonna go to can I get action underscore page.php, because we don't have this file. So we can just refresh it, or just going back. And if we click Ctrl+Shift+I, you can see that we have here inside of the body, we have the h2, the paragraph, and here we have the form. And inside of the form we have the label, we have the select, and inside of the select we're gonna have the 4 attributes, as you can see here. So yeah, so that is that for this example. And now, okay, so here we're using the option element. The option element defines an option that can be selected. By default, the first item in the drop-down list is selected. As you saw in this example, I changed the value in lines 12. The value equal sign is going to be Tesla, so I change it, and it's going to be the first option by default. So when we go to our website, it's going to be Tesla here by default, because he is the first option here that we have. So option value Tesla, option value Saab, option value Fiat. So Tesla is the first one by default. So that is that. By default, the first item in the drop-down list is selected. To define a pre-selected option, add the selected attribute to the option. So we can add the selected attribute. So let's see how it works. So it's gonna be Fiat. Okay, so okay, and it's pretty much gonna be the same, but we just have to add this selected attribute. So we can go to, let's go to Audi, and we are here in line 15. So we have the option element, the value attribute, and outside of the value attribute we're gonna have the selected attribute, and it's just gonna be like this. You don't have to type anything more, so you just save it. And this time the name of the company, or the car in this case, is not gonna be Tesla, it's gonna be Audi. So we can go to our website, and as you can see, it says Audi. So by default, it no longer goes to the first option that would be Tesla, but it goes to Audi. Why? Because we have put the selected attribute. Yeah, to define a pre-selected option, add the selected attribute to the option. So yeah, that is that. We have the visible values. Use the size attribute to specify the number of visible values. So here in this case we have the label. Okay, we have the label element, we have the 4 attribute, that is cars, we have choose a car. Okay, then we have the select element, we have the ID, that is cars, name cars, and now the size is just gonna be 3. So if we can go, we can click here. Even though we have 4 cars, by default it only is gonna be showing only 3, because the size attribute is being set to 3. So size equal sign, double quotes, and then the number 3. So if we can go to Visual Studio Code and just paste it here, we save it. If we can go to our website, we have 3 options here. We have 4 if we scroll down, but by default it's just gonna show us 3. Why? Because in line 11 in the select element we're gonna have the ID attribute, we're gonna have the name attribute, but this time we're gonna have the size attribute, and the size is gonna be 3. So what happens if I put 2? Okay, so let's save it, and it only is gonna show us 2. Okay, what happens if I put 4? So I save it, and it's gonna show us the 4 cars. So what happens if I put 5? And well, it's showing us the 4 cars and 1 empty space here, since we only have 4 cars, or 4 options. So that is how it works. Okay, that is that for the size attribute to specify the number of visible values. Now we have the allow multiple selections. use the multiple attribute to allow the user to select more than one value. So here we can select Volvo, I can select Saab, Fiat, Audi, okay, but I cannot select more than one. One is my limit here, so now we're gonna go for multiple selections, and we can check out this example and let's see how it looks like. Okay, so we can click and try yourself. Okay, so, and again we have the allow multiple selections, use the multiple attribute to allow the user to select more than one value. Okay, this is how it looks like. So let's go to our Visual Studio Code. I'm gonna paste this code here. I'm gonna Alt plus L plus O, and this is what I have here. So hold down the control for Windows / Command Mac for the Mac button to select multiple options. Let's see if this works. So if I press Control and I select Volvo, now Saab, now Fiat, and Audi, so it's working. So I can select more than one option. So how is this possible? What is the code here? Okay, so we have the H2, we have the paragraph, we have the form, so nothing special here. Now we have in line 11 we have the select element, we have the ID attribute, we have the name attribute, and the size attribute is going to be 4, and outside of that, outside of the size attribute, we're going to have the multiple attribute. So you can read here, this Boolean attribute indicates that multiple options can be selected in the list. If it is not specified, then only one option can be selected at a time. When multiple is specified, most browsers will show a scrolling list box instead of a single line drop down. So that is that. And nothing has changed here. We have these 4 options. We have the select, we end the select tag, and then we're gonna have 2 line breaks, so BRs. Then we're gonna have the input for the button, and in line 20 we're gonna have a paragraph. Hold out the control the control command in Windows or Command Mac button to select multiple options. And yeah, that is that. So you can choose one or you can choose more than one. Let me see if I can do it without pressing Control. You can do that without pressing Control too. So this is how it's working. Just the only thing that you have to do is in the angle brackets and the cell in my case here in line 11, I have the select element, I have the ID attribute, the name attribute, the size attribute, and after that I'm gonna have the multiple attribute here, but you just have to type it just multiple. So that's how it works. Now we're gonna see the text area element. The text area element defines a multiple line input field, a text area. So here we have the text area element, we have the name attribute, we have the row, and we have the columns. That is gonna this short for columns. So the name is gonna be assigned to a message, the row is gonna be 10 rows, and we're gonna have 30 columns. And in this attribute, remember, we have to put the equal sign, and inside of the double quotes we're gonna have message for the name, rows equal sign, double quotes, inside of the double quotes 10 for the rows, and columns equal sign, double quotes, and it's gonna be 30 for the columns. So the context is gonna be the cat was playing in the garden, and then we're gonna end the text area with angle brackets / text area. So let's try it to see how it looks like. So text area, this text area element defines a multi-line input field, and this is our context here, and then we have the submit button. So this is how it should look like. So let's grab this example. Let's go to Visual Studio Code, let's just paste it here, and let's see how it looks like. So I'm gonna open it with Alt plus L plus O, or you can just go to your file name, right click it, and then open it with Live Server. So how is yeah, it looks like this, and we can start writing stuff here. Okay, so it's good. And again, the lines of code. So we have in line 8 to 12 we have the form element. The form element represents a collection of form associated elements, some of which can represent editable values that can be submitted to a server for processing. We have the action attribute, and again we don't have this file name action underscore page.php. We can create it and just leave it empty, but we're just gonna omit it. So inside of the form element we're gonna have the text area element. The text area element represents a multi-line plain text and the control for the element's raw value. The contents of the control represent the control's default value. So we're gonna have a name attribute equal sign double quotes is gonna be message. The rows is gonna be 10, and as you can see here, we're gonna have one row, two. Let's put, I don't know, this one 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 and finally 10 rows. And you can put even more, but the first 10 is gonna be shown by default. So we have 10 rows, and also we're gonna have 30 columns. So horizontally we're gonna have 10 lines, and vertically we're gonna have 30 lines. Since columns is being assigned to 30, you have to do that cols equal sign double quotes and then the number 30. And if we put 40, for example, it's gonna go, the width is gonna increment, as you can see. So the width is incrementing, and instead of 30 we just put, I don't know, 10, the width is gonna decrement, so it's gonna shrink. So let's just leave it at 30. You can do that also for the rows. So let's just go, let's say 5. So we just save it and we're gonna have 5. So let's go for, I don't know, 3. And let me see how it's gonna look like. So it's gonna look like this. Okay, so just let's let it back to the by default 10. We have the context. Okay, whatever is the context, you end your text area with / text area. We have two breaking lines here, BR, and then we're gonna have an input element, and the type of the input element is gonna be submit. We end the form tag, and yeah, this is our result here. And you can press Ctrl Shift I, and you can have here, you go to element, you have your H2, you have your paragraph, you have your form. Inside of the form you have all the stuff, you have your text area, your BR, your input. So that is that. We can close this. The rows attribute specifies the visible number of lines in a text area. The cols for columns attribute specify the visible width of a text area. This is how the HTML code above will be displayed in a browser, as we saw it. You can also define the size of the text area by using CSS. So we're gonna be using CSS in this example, but here we have the text area element, we have the name attribute, and now we're gonna have the style attribute equal sign double quotes. Inside of the double quotes we're gonna have the width colon set to 200 pixels semicolon, and the height colon is gonna be set to 600 pixels, and then we close the double quotes. So that this is how it's gonna look like. So let's try it. Let's go to Visual Studio Code and let's see how this is look like. So the width is gonna be set to 200 pixels, and the height is gonna be set to 600 pixels. So let's just play around. Let's go for 20 pixels of width, and the height is gonna be set to 60 pixels. So it's gonna look very small. You can go, I don't know, 100 by the width and 100 by the height. So let's see how it looks like. Yeah, it looks kind of funny. And if you hold here into the corner, you can grab it and make it a little bit bigger. You can play around here, make it smaller or bigger. So you can just go back to the okay, it was 260 pixels. So but yeah, this is how it works. Inside of the text area element you just add the style attribute, and inside of the style attribute equal sign double quotes. Inside of the double quotes you put the width and the height, and you have to specify the numbers in pixels px. So that is that. And now we're gonna see the button element. So we already saw a bunch of examples about the button element, but the button element defines a clickable button. The button element, we have the type attribute equal sign double quotes button. We have the unclick event equal sign double quotes. This time is gonna be an alert. Open parentheses. Inside of the parentheses we're gonna have single quotes. Inside of the single quotes we're gonna have the hello world with exclamation mark, and then we're gonna close the double quotes, and then we're gonna close the angle brackets. The context is gonna be click me with exclamation mark, and finally we're gonna end the button tag. And we can just, for example, we can just grab it. We go to Visual Studio Code. I'm just gonna press shift exclamation mark, and we just go inside of the body. I just paste the piece of code that I just grabbed, and this is what I'm gonna have. So I'm gonna click here, click me, and we are gonna get hello YouTube. Let's put hello YouTube. Let me see, like this with 3 exclamation marks. So let's see what happens if I click it. Okay, hello YouTube with 3 exclamation marks. So that's awesome. Okay, we can save it, we can put it here, we can click it again. Okay, so it works, and you can change the context. So you can put, I don't know, do not click me, I don't know, do not click me. So we're gonna save it, and it says do not click me, but you're gonna click it anyway. So this is how it works. This is their example. You can try it yourselves to see how they did it. So it's the same thing, they just put an h2 here. Okay, so always specify the type attribute for the button element. So here we have, in the button element, we have the type attribute equal sign double quotes is going to be button. And you can read this stuff, it's important. The type of the button, possible values are submit, reset, and button. So submit, the button submits the form data to the server. This is the default if the attribute is not specified, or if the attribute is dynamically changed to an empty or invalid value. The reset, the button resets all the controls to their initial values. And finally, button type, the button has no default behavior. It can have client-side script associated with the element's events, which are triggered when the event occurs. So that is that. We have the unclick attribute, and this is where you put your alert or your message. And that is that. Like they say, always specify the type attribute for the button element. Different browsers may use different default types for the button element. And now we're gonna be checking out the field set and the legend element. The field set element is used to group related data in a form. The legend element defines a caption for the field set element. So here we have an example. Okay, as you can see, we have the form element. Below that we're gonna have the field set element, and inside of that we're gonna have the legend element. Then we're gonna have the label element, input element, label input, and then we're gonna end the field set tag. We're gonna end the field set tag, and finally we're gonna end the form tag. So let's click it here and see what is the example. So this is how it should look like. Personalia. So this is how it should look like. Let's grab this example and let's see what happens. So let's go to Visual Studio Code, and let's open it. Okay, Personalia, first name, last name though. Okay, so this is how it should look like. It's kind of like adding a little bit of a style here. Grouping for data with field set. The field set element is used to group related data in a form, and the legend element defines a caption for the field set element. So that is that. Again, in lines 9 we have the form element, we have the action attribute. Okay, inside of that we're going to have the field set element. The field set element represents a set of forms controls optionally grouped under a common name. and inside of that we're gonna have the legend. The legend element represents a caption for the rest of the contents of the legend element's parent field set element, if any. So we don't have anything here, we don't type anything inside of the angle brackets of the legend element. Outside of that, the context is just gonna be personalia colon, and then we're gonna end the legend tag. Outside of that, in lines 12, we're gonna have the label element. We're gonna have a for attribute. It's gonna be fname, short for first name. That is the context. We're gonna end the label tag. We're gonna have a line break here, so it looks sharp, it looks better. So if we don't have the break line and just save it, it's gonna look a little messy, like you see here. So that's the reason that we have the BR. So right now we go to our code, it looks cleaner. We have the input element, we have the type set to text. The ID is gonna have to match the for attribute of the label element. We have the name set to fname. The value in this case is being set to this name jam. We have the label input, another input, and finally we have the input type submit value submit. So and then we're gonna end the field set tag, and we end the form tag. So that is that. Now this is how it should look like. So now we're gonna go for the data list element. The data list element specifies a list of predefined options for an input element. Users will see a drop-down list of the predefined options as the input data. The list attribute of the input element must refer to the ID attribute of the data list element. So we have the form element, the action attribute. Below that we're gonna have, or inside that, okay, inside we have the form element. Inside of the form element we're gonna have the input element. We're gonna have the list attribute, and it's gonna be set to browsers. So it's gonna be list =, double quotes, browsers. Below that we're gonna have the data list, and the ID is gonna be set to browsers. Okay, so inside of the data list we're gonna have 5 options elements with values. The first value is gonna be set to Internet Explorer. The second is gonna be to Firefox. The third to Chrome. The fourth is gonna be to Opera, and finally the fifth is gonna be set to Safari. Then we're gonna end the data list tag, and we're gonna end the form tag, and this is how it should look like. So let's just grab this piece of code real quick that we have here. So we can just go to Visual Studio Code, press shift exclamation mark to have a template inside of the body. So in line 10 we're gonna paste that piece of code that we just grabbed, and we're gonna press Alt+L+O, and this is how it should look like. So we have just this, but we have the 5 options. Internet Explorer, we also, okay, I can delete this. We also have Firefox, Chrome, Opera, and Safari. So let's click it here to see how they did it. Okay, so they add some more information, some H2 and paragraphs. So let's just grab their example. Let's go to Visual Studio Code, paste their example, and this is what we have. The data list element. The data list element specifies a list of predefined options for an input element. Okay, so that is that. They did an H2 paragraph with that. They did the form element. Inside of the form element we have the input element, we have the list attribute that is set to browsers, and the name is set to browser. Okay, the list is set to browsers, and the name is set to browser, singular. So inside of the form element we're gonna have the data list element. The data list element represents a set of option elements that represents predefined options for other controls, and the rendering the data list element represents nothing in it, along with its children should be hidden. So the ID is gonna be browser, so it has to match, it's matching the list attribute of the input element. Inside of the data list we're gonna have 5 options with these different values: Internet, Firefox, Chrome, Opera, Safari. We're gonna end the data list, and in line 18 we're gonna have an input element with type submit, and that is that. And line 21 we're just gonna have a paragraph, and when we go to our website this is how it should look like. So if you go here, you click it, we're gonna have 5 options: Internet Explorer, Firefox, Chrome, Opera, Safari. So that is that. I don't know, you can put maybe one more and paste it here, and this option is gonna be, let's, okay, this option, what can we put here? I don't know, new, okay, we can just put new Safari maybe. So let's just put like this, new Safari. So when we go to our website, this time we don't have 5 elements here, we have 6. As you can see, the final one is gonna be new Safari, since I just added it with the option element, and the value attribute is gonna be set to equal sign double quotes, and inside is gonna be the new Safari. Okay, so that is that. And now we're gonna see the output element, and with this example we're gonna end this video. So the output element represents the result of a calculation, like one performed by a script. So they're giving us, okay, perform a calculation and show the result in an output element. So we're going to be using the output element. So in this example we have the form element, we have the action attribute. Okay, we're gonna have an input attribute. Okay, and that is that for the form. Then we're gonna have the input element with the type attribute, ID attribute, name, value. We're gonna have another input element with attributes, type, ID, name, value. And finally we're gonna have here the output element with the attribute name and the attribute for. Then we're gonna have 2 line breaks, and finally we're gonna have an input type of submit. So we're gonna have a button. So let's click it here to see how they did it. And okay, so this is how it should look at the output element. The output element represents the result of a calculation. So we have from 0 to 100, and if you click this blue button and move to the left or to the right, it's gonna add, for example, if I move it all the way to the right, it's gonna be 100 plus 50 that I have here is gonna give us 150. But if I move the stuff up or down, it's gonna increment or decrement. So right now it's gonna be 128, but if I go up, it's gonna be 178. So this is how it should look like. The output element is not supported in Edge prior version 13. Let's just grab this example. Let's see how it looks like in Visual Studio Code. So we go to our Visual Studio Code, we save it, and okay, let's open it, and yeah, it's working. So what do we have here? We have an H2, a paragraph. So yeah, that's that. In line 8 we're gonna have the form element, we're gonna have the action attribute. Is gonna go to this link that we don't have it. Okay, so that is that. In line 9 we're gonna have an input. The value of an element changes, or the content of an element with the attribute content editable is modified. So okay, an input equal sign is gonna be, okay, an input equal sign double quotes. Inside of the double quotes we're gonna have this value. This is very important. So we're gonna have this X that is gonna be the module. That value equal sign, and it's gonna be set to the parse end open parentheses. We're gonna have a that value close parentheses plus parse and open parentheses b that value close parentheses, and we close the double quotes. And this is a JavaScript, so don't worry if you don't understand this part. We're gonna see that in later videos. Right now we're just focusing on the HTML part. But for example, since this is the module, it's not recommended to do this way, but let's just for the sake of this video, let's just do it like this so you have a better idea. So here we have the module X, that value, and it's gonna be assigned to the parse end. Inside of the parse end we're gonna have the a that value. Keep in mind the a, then it's gonna be plus, so it's gonna be this element plus this stuff is gonna be assigned to X that value. So we're gonna have the parse end open parentheses v that value. Okay, keep that in mind. So we close the angle brackets of the form element, and then we're gonna type 0, and the 0 is very important, so we have here this 0 starting here. For example, if I put, I don't know, 300, so 300 is gonna appear the first number, so it wouldn't make any sense. So we have to put 0 here. Okay, so now in line 11 we're gonna have the input element, and the type is gonna be range, the ID is gonna be A, and we have A because in the parse in we have A, that value, that is gonna be the ID, the name is gonna be A, and the value is gonna be 50. Okay, so we close the angle brackets of the input element, and we're gonna put 100 plus. That is the reason that we have here 100 plus. So if we change, I don't know, we can put, I don't know, 200 minus. This is how it will look like. 200 minus, so the result is gonna be 150. So it doesn't make any sense. So it has to be 100 plus. So when I go here and I move the circle all the way to the right, it's gonna be 100 plus 50. That is gonna get as a result 150. So this is that. Okay, we're gonna have another input element with type number this time, and the ID is gonna be B. That is the reason why in the parse and open parentheses we have the V, that value that is gonna be the ID. The name is gonna be V, and the value is gonna be 50. Okay, so we close the angle brackets of the input element, and now we're gonna type in the equal sign. That is the reason why we have here the equal sign. You can have, I don't know, the exclamation mark, for example. It wouldn't make any sense, but this is how we have here. So we have 100 plus 50 exclamation mark 150, so it wouldn't make any sense, but we have the equal sign here. In line 16, this is the important thing, we're going to have the output element that represents the result of a calculation performed by the application or the result of a user action. So the name attribute is going to be set to equal sign double quotes, and we're going to have the module. In this case, it's going to be X because X is here, but I can change it. I can put, I don't know, my module is going to be PJS, and now my name attribute has to be PJS. So I save it, and it's still working. But for example, if I change it to, I don't know, just to X, for example, just now the name attribute is set to X, but the module I name it PJS, so the stuff is not gonna work. So if I refresh it, it's not gonna work. So it's not working because the module is not the same. So the module has to be set equal to the name. So we're gonna go to PJS, save it, and now the form attribute, a space separated list of other elements ID indicated that those elements contributed input values to or otherwise affected the calculation, and it's gonna be the IDs A and the ID B. So we end the output tag, and then we're gonna have two line breaks. Finally, we're gonna have the input, so we're gonna have a button, and this is how it should look like. So we can put, I don't know, 100 here is gonna work. So we can put yeah, we can put 1000 and it's gonna work. And we have the submit button here, and this is how it should look like. And finally, we just have the HTML form tags, the HTML form elements. We have the tag, and this column we have the form, the input, the text area, the label, the field set, the legend, select, the opt group, the option, the button, data list, and the output. And you can read this information here, but yeah, in this example, it's very important here the output element. Remember that for the name attribute, the module has to match the name attribute. So the name attribute is PJS in this example, or we can just leave it to Y, for example. And now our module here, the on input, has to be Y, that value. So we save it, and we can go to our website, and it's working, and this is how it should look like.